Hi everyone, William Frazetta here at the Frazetta Art Museum in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. Today I'd like to start a new series of videos that I will be calling the Tour Guide Series, in which I will take you around the museum and talk about certain pieces with you all. We have roughly 40 oils here, along with countless pen and ink pencils. Tons of stuff that ranges from the age of 8 years old, when Frazetta was a kid, all the way to his very last painting, which is Death Dealer number 7. So today I'd like to start off with Death Dealer number 3. So Death Dealer 3 was originally painted in roughly 1987. That was the copyright date of the first one. And a lot of you might be looking at the still that I post saying, well, that's not Death Dealer number 3. It's not the one I've seen published on books or sold as posters, and you'd be half correct. So Death Dealer 3 was actually done twice. The first one is the one that most people are familiar with, and the second one is the one behind me. Unfortunately, the first version no longer exists. Frazetta painted straight over top of it, go figure. He did that a lot, to a lot of fans' disappointment, but it's just how he did things. He used to say that the first version of stuff that he did was for the fans, and the second version was for himself. So the first version, for example, is the published one. You could go to your local store, buy the book, buy the poster, whatever. That was yours to bring home. But the original was something that he had to live with and enjoy. So if he wasn't particularly fond of a piece for one reason or another, he'd repaint it. He didn't think forward too much. Thankfully, my grandmother did. She worked very hard to make sure his museum was open, thanks to fans like yourself. And yeah. So anyways, the first one is interesting because he painted that during a time where he had an undiagnosed thyroid condition for about 8 years. I mean, if you know anyone who has a thyroid condition that goes undiagnosed. So he was hyperthyroidic, which meant that he had symptoms such as heart beating fast, nervousness, losing weight, hungry all the time, that sort of thing. And people originally thought it was like a brain tumor. They sent him to Mayo Clinic, they didn't find anything. They were thinking he was experiencing psychosomatic symptoms, which means that they think your psyche is causing physical symptoms, and that wasn't the case either. And finally, a local doctor suggested that he get his thyroid tested again. It was tested the first time, everything came back normal. They tested him the second time and everything came back not normal. So this doctor was just going on his gut saying, hey, this is thyroid, and it turns out he was right. Not sure what happened the first time they tested it. It was just if they took the numbers incorrectly or if the thyroid levels really weren't showing anything at that point. But either way, the second time, thankfully, it did show something and they treated him for it. So during this period in the 80s, it's actually probably one of the most unique periods in my grandfather's career because his paintings were so well known, especially for selling books, that he could paint whatever he wanted to in the 1980s, and people would literally hire authors to write a story about an unpublished piece just so they could get it as the cover. So Frazetta was painting whatever he wanted to just for fun, and people were paying to get his stuff, so there was almost no commission. He was technically retired at that point. He never actually retired, but he was at the point in his life where he met the goals he was looking for artistically, and just doing things for fun. So if you look at his stuff though, when the thyroid was hitting, his colors are a little bit off. So I'm used to seeing Frazetta very bright, very colorful. Even if it's like a piece where someone's struggling, there's still a lot of brightness and a lot of color. Whereas Death Dealer number 3, the first version, is very somber. The colors are very toned down, and Death Dealer looks very tired. And I think that's one of the few pieces where his emotions are really coming out, like the pain and the suffering he was going through with his thyroid condition. Death Dealer looks very tired, like he just fought the battle and he's done. He just wants to go home. And I think my grandfather, looking at that piece after he was better, it reminded him of being sick and he just didn't want to think about it anymore, so he repainted it. Also during that period, there were a lot of critics saying that Frazetta was done, his career was over, his stuff wasn't as good as it was in the 60s or 70s. You always have people kind of comparing the decades as if they're completely different people, and it's the same guy. So a lot of people were saying, he's done. And this painting, Death Dealer number 3, the second version, is Frazetta's way of saying not only is he back physically, health-wise, but he's back as in, I'm not done. My career's not over. I'm still getting started in a way. Again, a lot of expression was starting to come out in the 80s that you didn't see in the previous years. Not that Death Dealer 3, the first version, isn't as good as the first one. It is, it's just different. Or that any of the stuff before the 80s wasn't as good. That's not true. They all have their own little distinct qualities that make each decade great. But he was really trying to say, like, I'm still here, guys. Stop doubting me. So yeah, it is a very important piece historically, especially for Frazetta. A lot of people look at the first one as like the epitome of the Death Dealers, just because that was the first one. But really, if I'm really thinking into it, 3 was the one that really spoke to his personality and him as a person. So it's a very important piece for us here. So some frequently asked questions we get about the Death Dealer series as a whole. So one of the big ones is, how many are there? We got a lot of people thinking there's just 1, or people thinking there's, 4. There's actually 7. So this one being number 3. The first one, he's on the horse. The second one, he's on top of a mound of people and kind of hacking down. Third one is this. 4th, he's fighting the alligator in the swamp. 5, castle wall with the spear. 6, on the horse against the snake. And 7, he's in a courtyard about to fight an octopus with a whole bunch of people behind him. So 7's unfinished. 7 was what he was working on right before he died. So we have that in here, and it's a really important piece for us. It's very historical. Again, we have stuff from when he was 8 years old, and we also have the last piece he ever painted, and stuff in between, so you can really see his style change through the years, and just his technique kind of getting more solidified. So it's really cool to be able to be in one place and go back and forth and be like, oh, so 8's where he started, then you have some of the 50s stuff, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and then 2000s with Death Dealer number 7, and also some of the left-handed pieces that we have in here, which again aren't published much because they're left-handed. Death Dealer 7 is also left-handed. I'll get into that stuff in another tour series. Swap to the left hand because of the strokes. What else is asked about Death Dealer series? Oh, were they painted for any books in particular? Because they were published on the Prisoner of the Horned Helmet series, but they were not specifically painted for them. Frazetta painted them for himself, basically. It was his own character. So, yeah. So I hope you all enjoyed our first video in the tour guide series. Sorry if I seem a little disjointed in what I'm saying. I'm so used to talking to a group of people that when it shifts to just a camera, it's kind of weird to keep my thoughts straight, I guess is the best way to put it, because I'm not receiving any feedback or questions like I normally do with people actually in front of me. So yeah, I'm sure I'll improve as time goes on. Let's see. We will be reopening the week of July 2nd. So I think that's a Thursday. So we'll be reopening, following guidelines for Pennsylvania quarantine. The one thing we do ask is, just like pretty much every other business in the area, we do ask that you please wear a mask. We will be wearing a mask for your safety. We just ask you to do the same for us. You may or may not have high-risk people in our family. You may have the same in yours. So that's all we ask. We will be having masks at the museum. I'm pretty sure we just got some printed. So I have Death Dealer and all that cool stuff on them. So we will have those if you don't have any. So one thing I do want to say is, as always, we really do appreciate everything you've all done for us, especially during quarantine. Things were looking pretty rough at one point. A lot of businesses closed down, and we weren't an exception to that, but thankfully you all pulled together and you really pulled off quite the miracle. So I can't express in words how much we appreciate that, so the most I can do is say thank you. So have a wonderful weekend. Take care.